Today I get to welcome back a guest who has been a big part of making that possible for me. I'm grateful to him. I'm indebted to him because he believed in the mission of On Purpose even before many people did, or any people did. Before this podcast was even out, he allowed me the gracious kindness to go and interview him and release as the second episode of all time. Welcoming back to On Purpose, I'm so excited to have my friend, the incredible human, Novak Djokovic. Novak.
Thank you, Jay.
You are, do you know what? I'm so grateful to have you back and my heart is so full because you were one of those rare people that had seen one of my first ever videos. We'd reached out, we'd connected, we were talking a lot at the time. You were going through a really fascinating place in your career. You were recovering from an injury.
Right.
It was a different mindset. You were just on the cusp of becoming the greatest of all time. And you took a chance on me in so many ways. And I'm eternally indebted and grateful to you for that. So thank you for coming on then and coming back now.
Jay, thank you. It's a great pleasure to see you again and to be able to talk to you. Thank you for kind words in introduction and as well. Reflecting on our first conversation in 2019, I don't think I took a chance because we talked about it just before we started officially recording. You know, when you are connected with yourself and with your emotions, and when you feel someone deeply and look in someone's eyes and you understand instantly with your instinct, with your intuition, whether this person thinks good or thinks bad or has the right intention, has the heart at the right place. So I could see that from the first moment with you, and that's where I felt the connection. And even though we haven't seen each other for a few years, you know, I'm just so glad that we're able to connect now. And you led me through the list of all the guests that you had in the last almost 300 episodes in the last 5 years. And I couldn't be happier for you and for your wife and for your entire team. Amazing.
Oh, thank you, man. And it's you gave me my first Wimbledon experience. I got to see you play on center court.
How was that?
It was amazing. I mean, are you kidding me? It was like, and you crushed, you won, obviously. But it was just such a brilliant experience to see you play after getting to understand your psychology. And I think that's what I've respected about you over time, that you've really worked hard on your internal game as much as your external game. And I think you're one of those few rare athletes that have raised the consciousness by working on your own consciousness. So today I want to dive deep into that. And I want to dive right in. I wanted to start by asking you, like, what has it taken to become Novak Djokovic? Like, what has it actually taken to become you internally?
You know, you mentioned that I took a lot of the time and attention to dedicate myself to the internal work. And, you know, I've been blessed and really lucky in a certain way to be surrounded with certain people at the very early stages of my career and my life that have directed me into this direction of self-care, of holistic approach, of multidisciplinary approach to the preparation, to the prevention, to the recovery, both physical, mental, emotional. And at that time, because I was so young, I didn't understand that. And it didn't need to be explained to me in depth at that point. I trusted, you know, my tennis mother, as I like to call her. She passed away 13 years ago, but she was the one that really introduced this holistic concept to me. You know, I was going, you know, obviously to school, and then I was only 9 years old and 9, 10. And I was training with her maybe 2 or 3 times a week individually, tennis, and then I would have group sessions. And my parents were trusting her enough to allow her to participate directly into my upbringing, basically. So she also educated me off the tennis court as well. So she took me very often, at least 2 times per week, to her house, where we would look at the tapes of all the greats, both male and female tennis players. That's where my impersonation started. You know, people, you know, still to this day ask me, you know, when are you going to do the impersonations? And, you know, I haven't done it. I've done it early in my career and it was fun. It was viral and people liked it. And then I received a little bit of an evil looks in the locker room and I kind of felt like, you know, maybe I'm stepping over the line. So that's why I stopped. But that's where it started. And I was like, I was really trying to adapt all of the great things that I could see. And I have a kind of a photogenic memory, and I'm a very visual person. And that was something that was kind of expected. That is kind of common as well. What you do with kids, or with young athletes, right? You watch videotapes, you try to analyze, you try to talk. But then she had me listen to classical music. And she said, it's very important that you do that almost on a daily basis. Listen to classical music while you are writing your journal, while you are, preparing for bed, or any time of the day, but particularly those times. And, I liked it. I didn't understand the purpose of it, but, I liked it. And so we would look at the tapes and we would listen to this music, and then we would read poetry. And then we would do a visualization practice. At that time, it was not presented to me as such, but she would just say in a very simple way that would be understood by a boy, a 10-year-old boy, just close your eyes and think about how you want to play tennis, and think about when you're at your happiest. And so it started at a very early age. And I'm so eternally grateful to her for instilling this in me and teaching me, how to see life, basically, and understand that tennis is not, as an individual sport, of course, is also different because you don't have anyone to replace you if something goes bad, during the match. You have to figure out a way. So I think it requires more responsibility from you on a daily basis to prepare yourself for a biggest battle, internally and also externally, of course, with your opponent and with everything that is happening around. But, so it taught me to really understand that tennis is not only about hitting a tennis ball over the net and counting score and dreaming about these achievements and winning Wimbledon as our holy grail of tennis, but it's more than that. And I can use tennis as a platform to evolve into a better human being. At that point, I didn't understand that. But then as I was growing older and becoming more mature, I started to understand the importance of doing all of these practices. And I started to expand on each of these topics that I was going through with her. And then, I started going into yoga. I started going into the movement, into Christianity, Orthodox Christian. I'm very proud of my religion, but at the same time, I am very open to, embrace anything that can teach me, from other religions and from the spirituality as a whole. So I'm very curious by nature. So I was really always looking for new ways to improve myself and improve my life on this planet, And I was very lucky to basically have that space also from my parents. It's a kind of a self-discovery through the self-care, through tennis really consumed most of my life. Still does, not to that extent, of course. I have 2 kids, I have family and other businesses and other things that interest me. So I'm balancing right now between tennis and the other stuff, and I'm kind of making that transition slowly. I still play professional tennis, and I still experience my worst self on the court and my best self. And so going back to your comment at the beginning where you said, you're one of the athletes that really have immersed himself into the spirituality, into understanding the holistic approach and so forth, and the mental health, I would say yes, but I'm still surprising and shocking myself on how much I actually need to still work on that. And I still, quote unquote, don't know enough about that world. And it was really hard for me to accept that. I thought, since 10, I basically started working on that and growing the foundation. But it has evolved and has transformed so much for me in terms of how I see myself, how I see the world. And I thought, maybe when I was at the peak of my career and, I felt like I'm unbeatable and I feel like I could do anything, I kind of walking on the water. We all experience that in our own lives in a certain way, and it's a great feeling. But then the ego takes you places where it's hard to come back from. And maybe you shouldn't come back from that. Maybe you're trying to find a balance, find the optimal measure that really works for you. But it took me time to really accept the fact that what I have learned, what I have mastered, and what I'm doing on a daily basis for the last 20 years or more is not necessarily a guarantee that I'll always find a way and that will always work for me in this particular time of my life and circumstances that I'm facing. So that's a huge revelation for me and I'm still trying to get a grasp on it and understand all of these factors that are in play that are challenging me on a daily basis. And when I talk from this perspective, it's a beautiful journey that I'm trying to embrace. But when you are immersed in the dark moment, it's kind of hard to really get out of that.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying because in the Gita, the ancient text of India, it's spoken on a battlefield. And the idea is that you're always on a battlefield. And as you said, on the battlefield, you see the best of yourself and the worst of yourself. And often people said that to me when I moved to LA. Everyone's like, why do you want to be in LA? There's so much materialism. There's so much, illusion here. And I said, well, actually, I feel like I'm on the battlefield here. So I see the best of myself and I see the worst of myself. And the worst of myself reminds me to keep going and to keep working on myself. And the best of myself allows me to share my message with the biggest megaphone in the world. And so it's that dichotomy of actually when you're looking for spiritual growth, you want to be in a place that reminds you of your weaknesses as much as your strength. Because if you were only reminded of your strength, you'd just have your ego. And if you were only reminded of your weaknesses, well, then you would be depressed or disheartened.